All right, we have an interesting video here from Glenn Loury. He just posted it on his channel the other day. It's of a debate that he had with Christopher Hitchens over 20 years ago. So I had no idea that this debate even happened. So it's pretty interesting to even find out about this, and I'm sure it'll be interesting to listen. So we'll take a look and say some things. Last thing. One interesting note here is that in all likelihood, Hitchens is going to be the one arguing for reparations, and Glenn is going to be the one arguing against reparations. So I just think that's kind of an interesting and fun note, considering, Glenn's the black guy, Hitch is the white guy, so it's kind of like unexpected for them to be arguing their specific or their particular sides. But it speaks to the heterodox nature and general independence of both of these thinkers. So I think that's pretty cool. Okay, let's get into it.
If I was talking about somebody who carelessly let their automobile roll down the garage driveway and run into the automobile of someone else, then we're talking let's get paid. That is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the desecration of the most important ideals that this country has advanced. I'm talking about a nation founded on the notion that all men are created equal and endowed, so forth and so on, that nevertheless countenance the institution of traffic in human chattel. That is a monumental crime, the magnitude of which is diminished into something picayune by saying that it's about money. It is not about money. What it's about is whether or not we are going to rise and be the people whom we have always proclaimed ourselves to be. And let me tell you, folks, you cannot put a price tag on that.
So I've heard Glenn make this sort of claim before. He says that you can't put a price tag on slavery. Like it's much too big. It's the scar is much too profound in order to actually put a monetary price tag on this, and so we shouldn't even try. I actually think this is I don't think that holds. It makes sense to a certain extent. It would be very difficult to with any certainty put a monetary value on something as big as hundreds of years of slavery. However, there is precedent for putting a monetary value on similarly difficult to quantify things. So I forget the exact numbers on this, but I think the U.S. government has quantified in their calculations before of how they want to orchestrate public policy. They've determined what the value is of one single human life, and obviously, the value of a human life, this is going to be a very difficult thing to measure. How could you possibly do this? But they still did it, right? They still came up with a number. I think that the number was something like $10 million. So, maybe that's too little, maybe that's too much. I don't know, hard to say, but it shows that it is possible in principle, and we've also done it in practice, to put a monetary value on something as difficult to quantify as a human life, or as difficult to quantify as hundreds of years of subjugation, right? So yeah, I don't think that point is super strong. Yes, it's very difficult to quantify. That doesn't mean we can't try. Right. And then another follow-on point that is similar in vein is that even if it's difficult to quantify, if you were someone that was wronged in whatever way, wouldn't it still be nice? Wouldn't it still be useful to get something, right? Get some sort of monetary recompense or whatever? Because I don't know how to let's say my arm got chopped off in a butchery or whatever, and because of some a crazy accident that happened that was not my fault whatsoever. I don't know how to quantify the monetary value of my arm, but it would still be nice to get $1 million. It would still be nice to get some sort of monetary compensation. So I think that general point that he's making there, it doesn't quite hold for both of those reasons that I said. Last thing here, I'm arguing right now that Glenn's point is not super strong, at least that specific point against reparations. That doesn't mean I'm for reparations. I actually don't really know what I think in general on this issue. It's a complicated issue. I'm just saying for that specific point, I think it's not particularly strong.
The African-American family, more than 60% of black children are born out of wedlock. That has got something to do with the fact that men and women could be ripped from the moorings of their familial bond and sold away as if they were property, as if they were horses, under the institution of slavery. That's not a small thing.
Okay, that's another interesting. So this was recorded in 2001, right? See top right. I think this was already happening at the time, but especially in the intervening 20 years, like the white family, if you will, has also become, let's not use super dramatic language, but basically, single parent households have become much more the norm even in white American households nowadays, right? Fuck, I'm getting nervous. Fuck, God damn it. My point is correct, but I'm just fucking like, it's nerve-wracking to make it on command. Because if his point actually did make sense, then why is it that, something like 40% of white households today are headed by a single parent? Like, if it was really about slavery, why are we seeing such large numbers of non-black Americans having like a single parenthood as a norm? Right. And then another point, and then we'll move on. My understanding is that in like the 1950s, the rates of black single parenthood was actually much lower than it is today. So if it was really about slavery, you would expect it to have been like the worst in like the closest to slavery, and then it perhaps got better over time. That's the opposite of what you see. We actually see it. The numbers are best the closer you get to slavery, and then as you get closer to present day, the numbers start getting worse in regards to this. So that suggests that actually slavery was not the main cause for single parenthood. Probably it's just a general cultural thing, because it does seem to be affecting white Americans as well. I don't know if I'll put this in, but sorry, I'm kind of nervous. Okay, so like hopefully give me a break. All right, thank you.
It's bad social ethics. It is bad racial politics. It is bad racial politics. I am so tired of the politics of symbolism substituting for a substantive building of progressive coalitions in African American political experience that I did not know what to do. The nation is moving forward. We are a forward-looking people. 30 million immigrants come to our shores since 1965. They and their children are a part of the national story, too. How can we address the problems that continue to plague us, that derive from this outrageous history, without real political coalitions prepared to enact into law the myriad statutes that will be necessary with respect to healthcare, with respect to education, with respect to housing, with respect to doing something about the blight of our inner cities? How are those laws actually going to be passed unless majorities can be formed that are prepared to affirm them? Those majorities need to be given a narrative, a story, an account of what we are about. And I fear that the reparations construction is woefully inadequate to provide such an account.
I already kind of commented on this, so perhaps we don't have to say much here, but basically I take his bad politics point. That seems like, if anything, the most relevant point here in regards to whether or not this is actually ever going to get passed. Because again, just mathematically, like just knowing how humans work, generally speaking, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense in a country where like 12% of the population is black and 60% of the population is white, and then the rest like probably don't have a huge horse in the race either way. It just seems incredibly unlikely that something like this is ever going to be politically feasible. But yeah, we already talked about that.
We need to garner the support of new Americans who simply can't buy into this old argument as theirs. But most importantly,
why are they taking notes? Is this a class? What the? How come nobody takes notes? Nobody takes notes when I talk. This is bullshit. What the f?
Let us not close the door on our national obligation the easy way. Let us not buy ourselves out of this problem with 1 year's worth of military budget expenditures. Let us not let ourselves off the hook by converting what is a sacred civic obligation, as yet unmet, into the profane currency of greenbacks.
See, he keeps on going to this weirdness. Like, for an economist, he seems to not think highly of money. I feel like, I don't think the money is the end all be all, right? But it's pretty useful. And generally speaking, if you're trying to assuage an injury, at the very least, money should be on the table. Again, like if my arm has been chopped off, yeah, I'd rather have my arm back, I suppose. But I'd also take like $1 million, $10 million more than this. Like I would take that at some point. At some point, it would be like at least questionable which one is preferable, right? For the most part, though, I think that was very well argued. We're going to have a real debate here. It's not going to be like one, because often with a debate, who ends up being viewed as correct is not necessarily the person that is actually correct. It's the person that is better at arguing, right? I don't think that's going to be the case here, because we have like both sides of the debate are being argued by arguers who are quite competent, very, very, very good at their craft. So let's see the other side.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, I hope I can say. Comrades and friends, I might go so far.
Well, he is British, so I think he just wins on the accent. I think that's just how it works, right?
I should add, though, that as a teacher, I insist that anyone who has been told by their professor that they have to be here leaves now. I will not speak to captive audiences. That's good then. All right. So since the case has been so well phrased by my predecessor speakers, I thought I might just begin by a thought experiment, by an argument from analogy, of a case I once put myself in another context. I wrote a book saying that the British Museum should return to Athens the chunks of the sculpture of the Parthenon, sometimes called the Elgin marbles, always pronounced wrongly in this country. It was Lord Elgin, in fact, hard G, that they had annexed in the 18th century. They didn't make any sense that the sculpture should be separated. It was carved as a unity. That the original crime was the desecration of a great historic culture and a great historic temple, a gross insult to an entire culture and society of the Greeks, the amputation of an organic and aesthetic whole, a theft, a rape, a taking, perpetrated by the strong upon the weak. By the way, this was all done at the same time as the British fleet, Her Majesty's fleet, was also the military guarantor of the slave trade, of the triangular trade of the Atlantic and the Middle Passage. Now, the points I made on this, how justice could be done, how reparation could be made, how wrong once inflicted could be restored.
Okay, just quickly on this, multiple things. So one is Hitchens is displaying why he was one of the great orators of our time. That's generally speaking the consensus, I think, on Hitch, and I think for good reason. He's extremely good at this. That said, I wish he would go to the topic at hand a little bit more bluntly, a little bit more directly. He's like burgeoning on sophistry at this point. Like yes, probably there is an analogy to make here, but could we actually get to the matter at hand and not just spin slightly sophistry-like tales and weave these beautiful pictures of words dripping with vocabulary and amazing like funny jokes, etc., etc. Can we actually get to the reasons and the arguments and the evidence, please? Thank you.
The question you ought to be asking yourselves is, what path is going to get us there? Checks in the mail, or a progressive politics built around some idea about what it is that we owe to each other and what a decent society would look like?
Just quickly on this, note his use of the term progressive politics, right? I think that shows how things have changed in the last 20 or so years. Loury, maybe Loury's views have changed substantially in those 20 years. I doubt that they've changed that substantially during that time, although I'm not sure. I guess he could speak to that himself. My sense, though, is that most likely what happened is at least the left, the kind of Overton window of the left has shifted significantly to the left during those 20 years. And so whereas back then in 2001, Loury was fine with using a term like progressive politics, now he's actually viewed, generally speaking, as a conservative. So I think that's interesting.
I say to you, as has been said from the floor, posing it as a question of reparations to be paid off is an invitation to close the door in historical memory. It's an invitation to say, once the obligation has been discharged financially, we're done with it. And there's no need to talk about what the past is. I don't want to let us off the hook that easily. It's as simple as that.
And I guess that's it. Thanks for watching. And let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. YouTube.